It's a little bit odd just because why miss a chance for a free celebration? Why miss a chance to introduce yourself in the campaign ahead? Because even though John Huston's been in elected office 25 years, he's been in statewide office for 16 years, he's not actually all that well known or recognizable to most Ohioans.
Talking about the money, Carla mentioned that $79 million for John Husted from the Senate Leadership Fund. Sherrod Brown also got an announcement this morning of a $40 million investment, not into directly his campaign, but a PAC that would be supporting him. Let's go over to Lena Lai right now with more on the money. Show us the money, Lena.
You know what? I like how you said that because, of course, we want, come on. Because, we want to show me the money, right? So let's start with Sherrod Brown. Now, this is Q1, okay? Cash on hand, $16.5 million, according to the Federal Election Commission. Now, compared to John Huston cash on hand, $8.2 million. So Brown with more than double cash on hand, but that's not the whole picture, right? You're talking about outside money. As Doug had mentioned, let's dig down even into this. $79 million, as Doug mentioned, from the Senate Leadership Fund PAC, pledging to support Huston with TV, radio, you name it, flyers, etc. Meanwhile, the Democratic counterpart of that, the Senate Majority PAC, pledging $40 million, but that is just TV ads alone. So not exactly an apples and apples comparison, but there you see so much money, which translates to so many ads that you guys are going to see on TV and here on radio all up until November, guys.
The Sherrod Brown pledge was not for until the fall. So we'll start seeing those then. David, you and I talked about the money in this campaign, and I want to get your thoughts on that in just a second too. But I do want to ask Dr. Mack, we're already at $120 million just from two PACs that are pledging support here. Do you think there's any chance this is going to surpass the Marino versus Brown campaign, where I think it was $540 million ultimately by the time it was all settled?
The optimist in me wants to say no, but the realist in me believes it probably will, just because Huston is such a new incumbent, and the fact that he chose not to speak today means that, his supporters will have to spend a lot more money trying to introduce him to people and convince these individuals to continue supporting him.
And David, we talked about this when you see the money coming into campaigns like this. The Senate Leadership Fund side of it, Huston's $79 million was part of a $342 million package from the Senate Leadership Fund that was going to 8 key races in 8 key states in Senate races for the Republicans either to hold on to or take over seats. So when you look at the $79 million for Huston, $40 million for Sherrod Brown, what is that telling you right off the bat what this campaign is going to be like, money-wise?
Sure. The most important thing is not actually those dollars, it's the signal that those dollars sends, which is to donors across the country, interest groups across the country. This is the high profile race. This is where your first donation should go. And so that, oddly enough, is going to be rounding error in the final analysis of how much is spent in that race. And think about the difference between 24 and 26 is you don't have to compete with the presidential campaign, so you can actually dominate the airwaves even more with that money in an off-year election than you could have 2 years ago.
And Dr. Mack, when you look at this, how important in the national scope of things is this Senate race?
Well, in the national scope, right, of course, we know that the Senate is up for grabs. And so what this ultimately means is ultimately the future of the Trump administration, right? And so if Sherrod Brown wins, right, that's one step closer to perhaps revisiting impeachment for any of the individuals remaining in the administration and perhaps removal, versus if the Republicans secure the majority, an easier pathway to completing their agenda.
All right, we heard from Vivek Ramaswamy just a little while ago, accepting the nomination for governor in the Republican Party for the race in November. Our Kevin Landers has been covering this scene right there. Kevin, looks like people are starting to clear out already, but a pretty strong message from Vivek Ramaswamy this evening on the podium.
Yeah, Vivek has left the building. He's left about 20 minutes ago. Obviously very happy. The crowd here, I would say, wasn't extremely loud or extremely boisterous. I think this was sort of what they expected to happen tonight. Just a couple of notes that I took down. He entered the room to the song "How Legends Are Made." He didn't say "Make Ohio great again." He said, "We're going to make Ohio greater than it's ever been." He talked about bringing down electric bills. He talked about reducing property taxes. He talked about making Ohio a zero income tax state at some point. And then it didn't take long for him to lay into his challenger on the Democratic side, Amy Acton. Obviously, he went after her leadership role during COVID. He thought it was basically a mistake to put people in homes who were healthy, who were old, or who were healthy, or who were immune. He went in on and on and on about Amy Acton and her failed leadership. And one of the points that he made was that when the going got tough, she quit. And that resonated here with the crowd when he was talking about leadership. That's what he says he can bring to this ticket. Of course, we shall see when it all comes down in November about what happens. But clearly, the attacks are already beginning here from the Republican nominee to go after his opponent in this race and to make sure that there is a clear distinction between the two. And he actually made that point. He says this race, there could be no clear distinctions between these two candidates. And so we'll see how this all works out in November. But clearly, from the Republican side of you, they believe they have the candidate that can take them all the way in November. Doug?
Kevin, thank you very much. Great wrap-up there of the speech by Vivek Ramaswamy this evening. Vivek declared the projected winner with, we're saying, pretty much 85% of the vote, with the early votes that are being counted. Still many votes not in, but it's clear that it's going to be a huge margin for Vivek Ramaswamy over Casey Putsch. Kevin, thank you. We're going to check back in with you in a little bit. We also did, as I mentioned before, we heard from Amy Acton. We haven't put that on our streaming cast here yet, but we are going to play that in full in just a minute. As soon as we can get that turned around, we have it recorded. We also have a reporter there on the scene at the Amy Acton event where Amy Acton has spoken, and I'm seeing a live picture from there, but we're waiting for our reporter to get in place at this time. But in the meantime, we can tell you that as Kevin mentioned, Vivek was there, and Vivek has left the building, kind of like the Elvis thing. I think that's what Kevin was borrowing from there. But no surprises so far this evening.
No surprises, and I think you heard from Ramaswamy, the standard stump speech, all the lines about exactly, his kind of economic dream for Ohio, and those references. Well, Akron used to make rubber, Toledo used to make glass. It was a very pro Ohio in the 1870s kind of speech in terms of the economic promise of the state.
And any other impressions from you on the Ramaswamy speech this evening before we're able to check in with the Acton campaign?
I did find his commentary about our public school system to be very interesting, in particular about changing the bureaucracy surrounding it, because the only thing I could think about is this was a Republican-leaning bureaucracy. So are you critiquing yourself?
Or is he part of that Republican generation, so to speak? Is it a new Republican Party, as we're kind of hearing also on the national stage?
Well, there is that tension between him presenting a new vision for Ohio and the fact that, his party's been in charge uninterrupted since 2010 and almost uninterrupted for 40 years.